Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Meadows Museum and to our opening program for our new exhibition, Zurbarán, Jacob and His 12 Sons, Paintings from Auckland Castle. Please note that following this program, the galleries will be open so you can go up and see the exhibition. May I please also ask at this time that you turn off your cell phones. Our moderator this morning for this morning's panel presentation is Samuel Holland, the Algur H. Meadows Dean and an award-winning professor of music at the Meadows School of the Arts here at Southern Methodist University. A champion of the transformational power of arts and communication, Dr. Holland leads a team that raised over $130 million in new funding for the Meadows School. Under his leadership, the Division of Music at SMU was ranked #1 in the nation in 2015 by College Factual. In addition to artistic and programmatic excellence, the Meadows School is nationally recognized for innovative curricula, sustainable community engagement, and its entrepreneurial approach to its arts education. The presentations and conversation we will hear this morning will focus on art at the center of civic engagement. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Samuel Holland.
Thank you for that generous introduction, Scott. Welcome, everybody. Whether you're here live in the room or listening to the live stream on the internet. I'm here just to give a little context and make some introductions at the beginning. But I want to start with the big picture. Because in the arts and through the arts, we celebrate some of mankind's finest and most enduring achievements. More than anything, we remember a civilization by the art that it left behind. And the Meadows Museum is a place where many of those finest creations are preserved and made accessible to people today. It's a treasure to the faculty and the staff and the students that come to work here, and to the community from both near and far that comes to encounter great works of art. And we might be tempted to prize an institution such as this because of the way it serves artists and connoisseurs and scholars and historians. And that would be true, and that would be wholly worthwhile. But at Meadows, we believe it's more than that, because you see, we believe that the influence of art, particularly great art, shapes life, and the experience of great art transforms the human heart from the inside out. Through art, we become more fully human, more fully aware, more sensitive, more thoughtful, more tolerant of things that are different from ourselves. I believe that art expresses what words, science, and mathematics cannot fully capture. And I believe that through art, we mortals are invited to participate with the master architect in an act of creation, and perhaps we even catch glimpses of that which is holy. So this philosophy drives one of the most important aspects of the Meadows School, our Ignite Arts Dallas program, which seeks to engage and connect and transform this community through exceptional art experiences, particularly the sectors of the community that are the least well served by our established arts, culture, and educational institutions, even public services of the city. But I want to give you a little idea how this session came about and what on earth is the connection between some art in a castle across the ocean and a program designed to bring art into the lives of the underserved, mostly minority citizens of South Dallas. Because I may be crazy, but it seems to me that in a lot of ways we're actually working on the same thing, that despite outwardly very different from each other and hopefully inspire each other. So summer before last, a very small and very lucky group of us got to visit Auckland Castle. Plans were already well underway for this exhibition that opens here this weekend of Zurbarán and the Jacob and His 12 Sons. And so this trip was really kind of a diplomatic junket in which we would see the paintings in their native habitat and where they hung since the middle of the 18th century. And that alone was an incredibly moving and exciting and worthwhile experience. But when we got there, we found so much more than we expected was going on. And Jonathan Ruffer and his lovely wife, Jane, will tell you much more about that. But County Durham in northeast England is a region not unlike our Appalachia, a once proud and economically thriving region due to the mining industry, now struggling as the world has moved on from that industry that once yielded prosperity. Many of the people are unemployed or underemployed or displaced or dispossessed. Into this environment come Jonathan Ruffer and the Auckland Castle Trust with a bold plan to revitalize the region with the castle and its artistic treasures as the centerpiece. So art transforming life, just what I started with. And once I heard Jonathan speak there, I knew that if at all possible in connection with the exhibition here, something that would be extraordinary, even if nothing else were attached to it, but with this amazing backstory of the work going on in the community of County Durham and Auckland Castle, I knew that you had to hear from Jonathan Ruffer about more than his love of Spanish art. And so the plan for the session today is I will briefly introduce Jonathan and Jane, and they will speak. They will be followed by Clyde Valentín. I'll introduce Clyde a little more thoroughly when he comes up. And then that'll be followed by a discussion with among the panelists and all of you that would like to join in that discussion. So that's the plan for the day. So Jonathan Ruffer is the chairman of the Auckland Castle Trust, 11 Arches, and Ruffer LLP. I love it sometimes. It seems like the most important people often submit the most humble biographies. Jonathan grew up in North Yorkshire, read English at Cambridge, trained as a barrister, and then moved into the investment world, setting up Ruffer LLP. His hope is to be an encouragement to those who work for the good of others and for those who seek to work but have not had the opportunity. Dr. Jane Ruffer, chair of Auckland Castle Trust, pardon me, is a wife, mom, daughter, and dog walker. She has been a doctor, a lecturer, and a school governor, and has run a national helpline, served various charities, and a hospice. Although she didn't enjoy school or medical school very much, she's a fan of lifelong learning and links it to two very important decisions in her life: changing her medical specialty and undertaking a course in art history, which proved to be life-changing and life-enhancing. As chair of Auckland Castle Trust's Executive Committee, Jane is putting her art history studies to practical use in a project to restore Auckland Castle and garden and develop specialist art galleries to attract visitors and provide an accessible resource for the local community. She's hopeful that this regeneration of the built environment, potential visitor income, and community engagement will have a lasting and positive impact for the people of Bishop Auckland and the surrounding area. So without further speaking from me, let me invite Jonathan Ruffer to the podium. Jonathan, please.
When I delivered the CV to Dallas, I thought I was boasting, so it's clear that I need to get my act together and do a few more impressive things before it's the full Monty. I was brought up in the northeast of England, which was very much as Sam described, and then went down to London and worked in the financial world. And I wanted, in the later phase of my life and Jane's, to return to the north, to try to see if the good times which that region had enjoyed until 50 years ago might return. And it is exactly as Sam described, is what is the relationship between fine art and good things and the regeneration of a community. And I think the stakes are particularly high for us because we won't feel that our job is only partly done if the artistic and cultural side succeeds, but it doesn't reach out into the community. The whole point of what we're doing is to see that area changed. When I don't know what I'm talking about, I tend to resort to an analogy. And when people look at me quizzically and say, well, it's great that you want to help the people at the bottom of the heap, but is scrubbing up a castle the way to do it? My answer is that I'm not in Bishop Auckland to swat the mosquitoes. I'm there to drain the swamp. And that is a mighty challenge, because in many ways it means that you have to ignore the mosquitoes. You see the burning need, and does one divert one's attention to all the things that would be lovely to be different, or do we get on with what we see as a project to create something which over the course of a generation or more will change what is in the region? And we feel that we are on a journey. Jane and I both are committed Christians, and we feel very much that we're like Abraham in the Old Testament, that he was called on a journey, but he wasn't told where the journey was heading. And that's pretty uncomfortable, because we have absolutely no doubt that what we are doing is what we're called to do. But I rather cringe when people say, oh, tell us about your vision, because the truth is that we are on a journey that we don't know where we're headed. And we've been at it for about 5 years now. And what I would say is that we know more now than we did when we set off 5 years ago. But the way Sam presented the question is absolutely the unsettling thing at the center of our lives. Does the creation of a restored Bishop's Palace, does the celebration of 12 Zurbarán pictures of undoubted quality, does the creation, well, Jane will tell you all the things that we're doing, but are these initiatives the right ones to be changing the climate of where we live? And one of the things that we started off doing was to set out 4 priorities. And I'll share them with you. One is that what we do must go with the grain of the heritage of the area. Now, the castle, the palace, has been there for nearly 1,000 years. The pictures have been there for 250 years. It's an area that has very little going for it, but clearly, if we can harness these great things, this is not parachuting something alien in. It is utilizing something that's already there. The second thing is to work not is to work with the people of the area. I'm fairly easygoing, and generally speaking, I like pretty much everybody, but the one group of people that give me the dry heaves are people who set out to bring blessings to other people. Do you know them? That you're enjoying yourself and you're sitting there and you see somebody making a beeline and you suddenly realize they're coming to give you a blessing. and I don't know about you, but I make my excuses and leave. And why is that so unattractive? The answer is because there is an inequality of the relationship. You know, it is very difficult if you have energy and sophistication and resources, and you come to people who are on their uppers. What is the most natural relationship that feels benign that you could have is, well, little person, I've come here to try and help you. And it doesn't help at all, because it makes you feel smug and them feel patronized. So the art is to find an equality of relationship. And one of the ways that you can do that is through beauty, because beauty is a great leveler. All things that are bigger than yourself. If you are rather a big whitebait and next to you is a rather small whitebait, if you meet a whale, then you're both pretty much the same size. So the idea of using great art as the mediator between us and the people who we're communicating is designed to make us absolutely part of the community that we've come, not really to serve, because that's just trespassing into what I'm not sure I approve of, but to be part of. That is the second purpose. And the other two are held in tension. We are there for, we proclaim the beauty of holiness. Now, the beauty of holiness is a phrase that came about through the Tyndall translation of the Psalms. And that's Psalm 96. And it's actually the only place that you find it. But the beauty of holiness is a reference to God. So we're not afraid to be working in Auckland in God's name. But many strands of faith lead to either a triumphalism or a desire to proselytize and to feel that anything that isn't a reference to God must be second-rate. And so we invert the idea of the beauty of holiness, and we talk about the holiness of beauty. And so what that means is that if one can be in awe of beauty, then this itself is an experience that can change people. One of the things I've observed at first hand in Bishop Auckland is that there is nothing theatrical or tragic or exciting about poverty. It is tiring, it is boring, and it is monotonous. And it is very hard, if one is in that state, to rise to an occasion. And the French have a great word. I suppose the English word is a circuit breaker. The French call it an electroshock. But if you can be confronted with something that is bigger than yourself, there is that possibility of suddenly stopping in your tracks. And that gives you a chance. Do you remember the old joke? Why are you bashing that donkey on the head? Oh, I'm trying to attract its attention. Beauty can act like the club on the donkey's head. And that is the faith, if you like, that this is what we bring to empty the swamp. Education is a powerful thing, and we have a marvelous chap who works with us called Sutherland Forsyth. Now, Sutherland Forsyth is not a Welshman. He comes from the part of the world that you approve of. He's a Scot. And his insight, which has been electrifying for me, is to say that he has seen the way that the provision of great art to young people can transform them. And the key is to start young. I think the Jesuits said, "Give me the 7-year-old and I'll give you the man." Well, Sutherland is more ambitious than that. He thinks 2.5 is the right age. And the key elements are that the art must be uncompromisingly excellent. You can't simply paint a pastel picture and tell them how beautiful it is and to admire it. But when they're confronted with the real thing, and they're confronted not in a patronizing way, so they sit in a basement with a squeaky blackboard and polystyrene coffee cups, but they're invited into the to the body of the kirk, then things can happen. And he says that if you do this year after year, you start people at the age of 2.5, that after 20 years, you will have transformed that community. And I'm really not here to speak because I go through my life being half-baked. I've got a nice smile which gets me through most things, but I spend my life not really knowing what I'm doing, but at least I know what I want to do. And so I'm here really to listen. You wouldn't guess it from the way I'm ploughing on, would you? But my hope from this time is that we will come away with some practical ideas as to how we can take a castle, a palace, which has been pretty much dominating the area. Bishop Auckland was there to serve the bishops. Now the boot is on the other foot. The castle needs to be a servant to the community. So that's what I want out of this meeting, and that's what we're about.
I wanted to briefly introduce Clyde Valentín to you. A few years ago, we had become deeply concerned with our approach to community engagement in the city on behalf of the art school. And in a way, it was very much like, not intentionally, but as Jonathan referred to it, as almost patronizing. It was kind of a drive-by art exposure. And we might bring people in from the community into the school and then send them back home, and that would be the end of it. Or we might send somebody out and they would do something and then they'd come back, and there'd be nothing sustainable. And so our goal was to build a program that was deep and sustainable and based on relationships that would last a long time. And so we started looking across the country to find a person to lead that program. It was a long search, and at the end, Clyde Valentín was the person that emerged as the top candidate. He had a lot of experience working in New York City as director of the Hip Hop Theater Festival and other things. I've found, as we've got to know him, that in the world of socially engaged artistic practice, Clyde is a superstar. I can go to San Francisco and people say, "Oh, you know Clyde Valentín, that's great." Or I can be in Boston, "Oh, you know Clyde Valentín." There were other people that said when Clyde actually chose to come to Dallas, they were more surprised that we got him out of New York than if we had managed to get the Statue of Liberty. But anyway, it's a real pleasure and a privilege for me to introduce Clyde Valentín to you to talk about what the Meadows School is doing here in Dallas and around the country, and then through the initiative Ignite Arts Dallas. And then we'll all get together and try to connect some of the threads that have been permeating the talk. So Clyde, please.
don't think I've ever been compared to the Statue of Liberty, Sam, so thank you for the introduction. Really inspiring work, what you all are doing. I mean, I've learned a little bit about it, but to hear you and to have you unpack all of that you're doing, I think the parallels are more striking than I even thought coming in terms of the sorts of methodologies and practices you have to follow to do this sort of work well, with authenticity and genuineness to the folks you intend to work with. And with is an important word, right? It is not solely in service to, it is in service to each other. There is a level of equity that is necessary because you appreciate the value that is already existing in that place, right? And for me, as a New Yorker, I'll admit I knew nothing about Dallas coming here. I did some homework. I did a little bit of research. I was struck by the fact that, you know, Dallas is a younger city than New York, and our country is a younger country than your country, and there was an opportunity to shape some things. And that's a long view. You talked about 2.5 years old. You know, we're talking about generational shifts. So this was an opportunity to work within an institution, which is I'll admit, the first time I'm doing that professionally, to realize something new. So our mission, as we kind of spent a year in Dallas with a small team within the School of the Arts to begin this program, was to ignite the imagination of our students and citizens to imagine more just and vibrant communities. We pluralize communities because we're not, unlike Auckland, we're not focused on a specific place. We're focused on the ethos of the city and the various neighborhoods comprised that make Dallas, Dallas. So it was important for us, even within our mission, to be as inclusive and open as possible, knowing that some of our students will move on to other places, as they very well should. New York, LA, Chicago, some of the major other cultural centers in America. But some of them will stay. Regardless of whether they stay or go, can we also equip them with these skills that will accentuate their talents and practice? And that was, I think, another thing we were looking to introduce and are doing so. We formally launched in May of 2015, so it took a year of what I called soft programming and prototyping and relationship building, just getting to know the lay of the land. So we've been formally programming now for the last 2 years. And we do have a vision, and that's, in essence, just to be a nexus, a connecting point between people, their various purposes and places, right? So we're across the city, and we'll get into that. But part of the learning and the reality that we're in, just to unpack our city a little bit, and we're all Dallasites at this point here, and this was striking to me. I grew up in New York City in the 1970s and in the 1980s. I grew up around blocks that had rubble, literally bricks, no buildings. I ran and played through abandoned buildings as a child. It was like a fun thing to do. It was art garden, right? My exposure to art was essentially street art first, and I was fortunate enough to even have access to that. It helped guide and shape my own experience, and it led me to this particular point and moment. So I was accustomed to the kind of geographical borders as a young person in New York City that existed, for example, between the Upper East Side and East Harlem, right? 96th Street is a physical border. In my neighborhood in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, it was 69th Street, which separated us from Bay Ridge. The borders here also exist. You know, the walls may be virtual, but they are physical as well. And that is our highways and our Trinity River. So this is kind of a quick overview of, you know, that sort of disparity and starkness, and, you know, just conceptually we're here in the Park Cities. You know, Trinity River runs in a southeast direction. And, you know, this geographic footprint is quite vast. And that was another thing that really struck me about the city is, you know, how do we engage in the geography and the relationship of that geography amongst the many communities that exist across Dallas. So these are some very real metrics that, be it health or access to food, or overall poverty that I think we had to be very real about as we entered community and started engaging in relationships. Considering that, you know, SMU is a 100-year-old institution, it is a privileged institution, and regardless of who I am as an individual, I represent that institution and its history in relationship to the city. So being conscious about that as we entered into relationships was very important. So this is a quick outline of the various organizations and institutions that we've worked with. So there goes our Mustang. And, you know, down here, for example, these are a couple of recreational centers, Beckley Center Recreational Center in the Lancaster area. Up here is Vickery Meadows Translation and the Vickery Meadows Learning Center. This side of town behind Love Field is Bachman Lake Together. Obviously, we're working at the core of the city with the Nasher and the Dallas Theater Center, the DMA, APAC. This is the Oak Cliff area, so there are a number of artists and organizations we worked with here. South Dallas Cultural Center is a city-owned cultural center. The Oak Cliff Cultural Center is over here off of Jefferson Avenue. But the idea was to not only focus on South Dallas, but to try to build a citywide footprint and relationship. Complementing that, we thought it was important to connect Dallas and its constituents, our students, our citizens, with our region. And we know that we're uniquely situated in our geography, but what were the relationships we can foster to create more networks and more relationships across the region? So there are two initiatives and two projects that we have focused on to foster this sort of access and connectivity. Alternate Roots is a 40-year-old service organization for artists and arts organizations in the South. And they define the South as Maryland down to Texas. So this region right here is their sort of geographic footprint for membership. New Cities Future Ruins is a Meadows Prize initiative that we've launched last year in partnership with two major higher ed institutions, the University of Texas, El Paso, and Arizona State University, Gamage Center for the Arts, looking at the tremendous growth that we're experiencing not only in Texas, but across the Southwest. So these are sort of, when we look to our east, the Deep South, when we look to our west, the Southwest, and you know, these two initiatives and organizations were a way for us to kind of connect, again, our students and local artists and artists from those cities to us here in Dallas in the middle. So what we've done over the last couple of years is nurtured a number of residencies where we've brought artists into Dallas, but we've also are beginning to send artists out of Dallas. And at every point, we tend to connect, again, students, campus, and city. So we do our best to hit 2 out of 3 of those marks, really with students at the center. The lower right corner here, Champagne Jerry, he's a native of Palestine, Texas. Jerry was in residence with us for a week here in Dallas, and he works and lives out of New York City. It was great to bring him back. We partnered with Central Track, which is the University of Texas Dallas Center that is now since closed, unfortunately. It was an important space for us in Dallas that no longer exists. But it was an important partnership at the time. This group over here was our first Meadows Prize winner. It's an arts collective out of Detroit. And our principal goal with this particular futurism project, it's called Beware of the Dandelions, was really about building a cohort of community partners that would last well beyond the particular relationship of this project. And we have gone on to work with many people out of that organization. New Cities Future Ruins was both a festival and a convening. So we had site-specific art across Jubilee Park, which is, a wonderful neighborhood in Dallas that's transformed significantly. And part of what we wanted to do was share the success of Jubilee Park as a model to inspire us to think about how other neighborhoods could develop uniquely in their own right, where the citizens of that particular neighborhood, the community members, are shaping the very success of that place. And that is unique, I think, in the city of Dallas. So we felt it was an important thing to share with folks who were coming into the city. And we set up about 5 different site-specific installations across that neighborhood and had a walking tour. We also organized a bus tour, and that's this photo on the right that took us to SMU and a number of places across the city to help people get a sense of the unique geography that we're encountering in Dallas. So giving them a sense of place, that was very important to us. Alternate Routes is, they have a regional meeting every year, and we hosted one of them. So we had artists come in from across the Deep South, and they chose Dallas over Houston and Austin and San Antonio, I think principally because of our presence and the word that was kind of beginning to circulate. And we partnered with a number of organizations locally to facilitate this regional meeting. We worked with the South Dallas Cultural Center, the Oak Cliff Cultural Center, the Latino Cultural Center. We were co-host as well. There were a number of individual artists who served on the host committee. And we had around 125 participants over 3 days with that convening. And that's increased their membership out of artists coming out of Dallas and the resources that they have access to, because this organization also offers micro grants for creation and shared learning to individual artists. So we've helped to drive additional resources into our city and into its citizens. And then Public Works is a collaboration with the Dallas Theater Center, and it's one of the first things I talked about when I arrived. It was something I thought would exemplify this notion of engaging students, engaging citizens, and working across institutions. This is a production of The Tempest. It is a 90-minute musical version of The Tempest. It is quite beautiful as a piece of art. The songs are amazing. The story and the adaptation is well crafted by Leah Debasene and Todd Almond. Those were the collaborators on the adaptation. So this was to date our largest single investment in an idea. And it would not have happened if we did not have partners and collaborators. Dallas Theater Center being our regional theater in Dallas, getting them on board was critically important. But what was equally important were the 5 community partners, the right community partners that we can go to where, again, we weren't just bringing them free theater classes. We needed them to have full ownership over, whether or not this was needed and necessary in their respective organization, and B, having the infrastructure and capacity to work with us to kind of build this village around a 200-member ensemble, which is quite large for the Dallas Theater Center or, quite frankly, any theater. Those 5 community partners reflected in this map are Vickery Meadows Learning Center, Jubilee Park and Recreational Center, Literacy Instruction for Texas, which is in Southeast Dallas, Dallas Parks and Recreation through their Adult Seniors Active Program in Beckley Sainer in Southern Dallas, Bachman Lake Together. So we had 5 organizations partnering with us. The youngest ensemble member was 5. The oldest ensemble member is 90. And then they go in full costume. So we had wind spirits, air spirits, water spirits. Ariel was commanding all of them across the stage, and we had a 5-week rehearsal process. Folks had to make a tremendous commitment to show up to rehearsal. They were held accountable as any other actor or performer would in terms of showing up on time, signing in. People carpooled. In some instances, the city of Dallas supported local transportation. Mobility was a critical issue in this particular project and getting people to the center for rehearsals. But leading up to this rehearsal period, we had spent a year in community conducting these workshops, these theater workshops. And in each workshop, it was completely different. Some emphasized mobility and moving around. Others emphasized, in the case of Literacy Instruction for Texas, actual reading, since it's a literacy program, and also memorization, and verbal storytelling. Adults who have spent their years not necessarily having a command of language, it was very important to focus on them becoming comfortable with language. In each of these instances, we customized and co-designed what that particular workshop would look like in partnership with that community organization. With Bachman Lake Together, we knew it was dual generational because it's about parents and children. But it also had to be Spanish dominant because they're working primarily with an immigrant population. So we had to find theater makers who were fluent in Spanish as well as English. We had to find students who were also comfortable in English and Spanish, who served as teaching assistants. And everything had to be family friendly and work both for the parents and the children. So what I'll leave with you, and I think you emphasize this as well, Jonathan and Jane, is that this is all a process as well, right? We're learning. We're 3 years into our work. We currently have a company in residence with us at the School of the Arts, Scaramia Theater, who is launching a national tour out of our campus into some other parts of the state, including Houston. They'll end up in Los Angeles at this international Latino theater festival called Encuentro. And the play revolves around a young person who has undocumented status, who's basically a dreamer. They co-produced this play originally with the Dallas Theater Center 2 years ago. It was part of their main season. And there was an opportunity to adapt the play into a touring production. And we jumped on board to be a commissioner and to leverage some of our relationships. So our hope is that, this is the beginning of the touring muscle for Caramia, but also the beginning of our relationship to some of these other venues across the state and the country to continue to export work, if you will, that is developed by our students and our community members around art that emanates from our city. It's a very timely subject. The work is this weekend, so you're more than welcome to check it out. You can go to our website. You can go to garamiatheater.org as well. We'll have a panel discussion tomorrow, but my mantra since I've arrived, and I have a lot of them in my life, and the folks who know me, know I kind of repeat them almost ad nauseum, but the one that has really rolled with me for this particular journey is this quote by Van Gogh. And I didn't find this. This was sent to me by my aunt, who's also my godmother and definitely one of the angels in my life, Lydia Rafferty. If it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't be standing here. And I was struck by this, and it's really resonated, and that great things are not done by impulse, but a series of small things brought together. And I think that exemplifies the sort of methodical, step-by-step process when you're doing this kind of work, when you are engaging folks that you don't have a relationship, and there are inherent sort of gaps between how you communicate, the kind of skills you bring to the table, the kind of skills they bring to the table, the distrust that might automatically exist based upon historical relationships that really have nothing to do with the particular moment or the present, but to be conscious of all those things as you kind of embark upon this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Clyde. Could I invite the speakers to convene here in the chairs to my left here? No prescribed agenda or objective other than a conversation that hopefully inspires and informs and shares information. And so I thought I'll lob a question or two and see where that leads, and then we'll open it up to everyone here. Both of you, both directly and indirectly, when I say both, I'm referring to Jonathan and Jane together as one and Clyde as the other, talked about excellence in the art itself. That there must be no compromise of artistic quality or integrity. That no dumbing down of the art itself in the efforts to connect with community and even people who may be wholly unfamiliar with the experience. And Jonathan, you referred to it in the context of the Zurbarán paintings and guests encountering them. Clyde with the public works, and the fact that here we have an amalgamation of a cast of 200 people in which there are, 4, 5 professionals. Every other person there has likely never been on a stage before. But it had to all, there could be no compromising the quality of the product and of the production. You know, they had the same types of rehearsals and technology and lighting and direction that totally professional crews would have. And if it had not been that way, I think the whole result would have been, quite compromised. So I wonder if you might talk about that a little bit. How do you?
I think the first thing is there are no shortcuts to good work, right? And also the recognition that everyone has something valuable to bring to the table. right? So when you kind of set an equitable sort of standard, you know, upon the invitation, people will meet it. And I think that's what we experienced in that rehearsal room from the first day, which was extraordinary. And, you know, being principally a producer by training, you know, when your first day of rehearsal kind of will give you a sense of how things might go, right? Sometimes there's surprises, sometimes, you know, it doesn't go well. And our first day of rehearsal, we were like, really? You know, it's going to get hard. We know it's going to get hard, but this is great. To see people kind of supporting each other in terms of, you need to be on my left, or when I take this step, you need to take that step. People kind of working with each other, being able to follow the professional actors when they arrive, to kind of see that level of professionalism, kicked it into high gear for them. Because then they got to observe how someone like Andre DeShields was working, right? It is truly transformative. And you know, we'll unpack this a little bit more with our report, because we did have a researcher with us the entire time who's been one of the co-architects of the Public Work Initiative nationally. Her name is Dr. Shirley Bryce Heath. And she worked closely with the Public Theater. She was recently in Seattle, a Seattle rep, where they replicated this program as well. So Shirley will be coming back to talk a little bit more about, you know, Dallas specifically and what we've learned. And part of our goal is to share this out. I think the Royal Court now is going to be doing a public works program as well, just to plant their seed. I know Shirley spent some time in London with them, but you know, it's the goal is to unpack the methodology and the philosophy so that we can strengthen all of our collaborative efforts in the city and hopefully across the country in this sort of way.
Let's continue to kick around the excellence and equity issue. And you started with that to some extent, Jonathan, in the when you were talking about not being patronizing, but that because of the disparate power relationship between the parties or something like that. Could you say any more about that?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? I think of, you know, if each of us thought, you know, what are the great meals we've had in our life? One wouldn't necessarily go to the, you know, the time you went to a Michelin 3-star restaurant. You know, it might be that, but often it's something else. And there's no doubt that it's the people that create things. I mean, the word that comes to my mind is authentic. We're quite fortunate in that the thing that is hardest to create authentically, if it's not there, is history. Now, we're very long of history. You know, we've got that Roman town which changed shape. We've got a viaduct which was part of the Darlington and Stockton Railway, which was the first passenger railway in the town. We've got a palace. We've got these great pictures. And so, in one sense, we have the most difficult bit on our already provided for us. But if you go with the grain of people, do you know how it is when you sit next to somebody at a dinner party? If you decide after 30 seconds that they're boring, A, they are boring, and B, you are boring too, because there's no... but if you burrow, you can have a great evening. I mean, one of the great things about being here is I haven't had a boring conversation in 3 days. Or in a lifetime, but
Please.
One of the things that we do has a resonance with something that Clyde was talking about. We have a program called Kinran, which is a community production. It's a sort of pageant that's put on. It's having its last show tomorrow night for the season. It began last year. It's put on by volunteers. They have professional trainers, but we have 1,500 volunteers who put this show on, and the public come and see it. So it's got to be good enough that people from all over the world have come to see this show, and the skills of being part of that show are amazing. People they sign up in the autumn, and it's put on in the summer, and they need to commit to going to the rehearsals, doing the training. They rehearse in the rain. It's an outdoor show. I think tomorrow night it's going to rain on the show, but it will still go on. And it's brought people in who, the early adopters were maybe the groupings we were talking about earlier on, the ones who have got a bit of motivation, have got an idea of what doing something together, you know, playing in an orchestra or being in a team gives you. But this is for the whole town, and it's brought people in to be involved in a way they haven't been before. They found a family, they found structure in their lives. And just because it's hard doesn't mean you don't do it. And they're being trained by an amazing guy who trains the mass choreography for the Olympic opening ceremonies. So he's got, talk about world-class standards, he's got world-class standards, and they have to live up to it. And they find they can. And that's given them such confidence to do this thing. And there are people in the sort of peripheries of the community. There's wonderful pyrotechnics, fireworks that go off. Well, we've got ex-arsonists doing that. They're very skilled.
You know, the guys with love and hate on their knuckles.
But like Clyde's community program, it brings people in, they're given professional training, and professional standards are expected from them, and they deliver it.
It's not community theatre.
This is, and it sells, you know, the public buy tickets, so it's got to be.
In 2 years, we sold 160,000 tickets at £40 each. So this is.
So it's part of what's going on. It's a sort of beginning of what could happen a generation on. This is an early showing of what can happen in a community that starts to pull together and starts to raise its aspirations.
That's so, that was 25 years. Together, it's a divided city to bring this out. Without a lot of tangible going to continue.
And I think that's one of the things I appreciate about what I hear you all saying as you talk about the moments and the work that you're creating now is the commitment to consistency, right? You are not going away. You are committed. You are expecting that level of commitment from all the relationships that you're creating within Auckland, right? And I think that maybe that has been one of the things that's been missing with some of our efforts in Dallas, in that if it doesn't work the first time, right, and it's a failure, how do you learn from that and continue so that you're committed? Because a failure will give you learning. And I think for us, we're embracing that level of risk. And we went into something like Public Works with the Dallas Theater Center and those community partners talking about a 3-year commitment to start as a starting point, you know? Not just this one time, we'll see how it goes, but like, we want to do this for the next 3 years in partnership with you.
I've been asked to step back to the mic so my voice will be picked up. And that kind of sets up another question that I was thinking about from the beginning and throughout this whole discussion. And that is the short view versus the long view arguments that Jonathan referred to. And I wonder if we could dig around in that a little bit. I mean, when we're faced with a world that has tremendous and immediate needs, I mean, whether it's health or healthy food or protection from violence, and yet we're trying to make an argument that that art and the experience of art has a timeless effect. But that's hard to make. It's hard to make it in politics. It's much harder to sell the value of the NEA, the National Endowment for the Arts here, than it is something that, say, meets immediate human need. And so I wonder if any of you have thoughts or arguments that you use that help achieve the long view that we want through art.
Can I have a shot at that?
Please.
One of the things that was the glory of Great Britain was the welfare state, which happened when we were basically bankrupt in 1948. That's when 1947 was when all the laws were passed, and the Education Act, universal education, health for everybody, and it must have been an extraordinary time to have lived through. Now, the vision for that was created in a thing called the Beveridge Report, which was written in 1942, when Britain was really looking like we were going to be defeated in the war. And one can absolutely see, looking back, at what a brave and powerful thing that report was. Because if that hadn't been written in 1942, there would have been no welfare state in 1948. But if actually everybody got carried away in 1942 about building hospitals, let's build any more tanks, let's build another hospital, let's spend our time working out what the welfare state was like, we'd have lost the war. And so the art is to hold these things in tension. And we feel that the cultural side of Auckland is a means to an end. And a means is something which gets you to the end. And so it is vital. And it's my observation is that when I'm wondering about a Valdez Leal, I spend my time being envious of this guy, Mark. I look at these great pictures, and I think, will Auckland ever have these sorts of pictures? But I don't find myself thinking at all, oh, never mind about Valdez Leal, let's go downtown and swat a few mosquitoes. I'm absolutely passionate that what happens in the Spanish Gallery, what Stefano does in the research center is of the highest quality. And I care as much about it for its own sake, but I know that it's not for its own sake. That's how I put it.
So the means justifies the means.
Yeah, very good.
We're getting close to the end of the time we have together, and I'd like to open the floor to anyone that would like to comment or question, and so that it can be picked up. If you'll state the question, I'll repeat it, please. Maybe I don't need to repeat that.
The lottery, there's a national lottery that provides funding for a number of different schemes, sports, education programs, and some of it is to do with maintenance of heritage sites. And we have had a grant from that part of the lottery funding to do the castle restoration. They won't do all the other things. They're not interested in that sort of thing, but we're allowed to dip into the pot for that. that type of program.
Someone else. Linda.
This is for us, the genesis of this wonderful idea.
I wanted to be involved in the north of England. I'm very typical of somebody in that part of the world. At the moment I was finished with my education, I moved south. The northeast of England is great at exporting, not so good at exporting finished goods, but great at exporting people with energy. And I felt that the thing we needed to do was to go back and commit to the area. And I'm a sentimentalist, and I imagined myself, I said this to somebody yesterday, I imagined myself as being the patron saint of the soup ladle, you know, standing, dishing out the minestrone and having a great time. And somebody said, well, would you be any good at that? And I'm completely impractical. I've got, you know, I wouldn't be able to make the minestrone. I'd have left the ladle in the back of the car. You know, the car'd have a puncture. I wouldn't know what to do about it. But I can encourage people, and I can unify. And these pictures, which had been in the castle for so long, one of the few great possessions of the Northeast, were going to be sold offhandedly by the church, and this was, you know, one of the few things that wasn't nailed down. And we felt that this was a way of giving an earnest to the people of the northeast of England that we were the US cavalry. And that we were going to commit to the area. So we bought them and gave them to the people of the northeast. And I shouldn't think there was a single person whose head was held up higher thinking, you know, I've got a zillionth share in Ithaca. But the idea was to say, this is how we are to you. And from that, very unexpected things happened. Gabriele Finaldi was the deputy director of the Prado, and he had been the person who had taken the pictures and shown them in the National Gallery when he worked there, and the Prado. And it was through him that the possibility of a partnership with the Prado happened. And I'm a great believer in incongruity. And the idea, I've always been fascinated by Bilbao. You know, the great art there, the Guggenheim Museum, if that was in Florence, yeah, it'd be great. But, you know, that's, you know, Florence is the sort of place you expect that. But there's something edgy about going to an old shipbuilding town and finding great art. And I thought to myself that the idea of Bishop Auckland, which has more pubs, you know, more drinking houses than anywhere else, partnering with the Prado was a great idea, because if we get away with it, then we'll have something special. I'm very keen on opera, and there's a hellhole in Ireland called Wexford, and you go to Wexford to hear these great operas sung by great opera singers, and it's because it's in this, you know, this mud bath in Ireland that makes it so memorable. And I wanted that. So.
There's a part of that story that I've heard Mark say this, and I wonder if you could clarify this, that you actually set out to purchase the paintings and discovered that the castle came along with them, or something like that. Could you tell us how that actually is that true?
I'm not as foolish as I look. And I could see that the pictures were nice and the castle was trouble. I was, the person who helped me was Jacob Rothschild, who some of you might know here. And he said, look, you've unlocked the door of the castle by dealing with the pictures. Not to open it, not to solve the problem of the castle was a mistake. And I said, I'm not sure whether having the castle will make sense in what I want to do. And so he brought in reinforcements in the form of another name drop, Neil McGregor, who, I don't know if you know Neil McGregor, but he's like Philippe de Montebello with knobs on, in Europe. And everybody takes him serious. And he said, no, you've got to go for the castle. And I knew when I was beaten. 30-15.
Okay,
So we went for the
thanks
castle.
for clarifying that. We have time perhaps for one more question. Yes, please. I will try to repeat this one. Oh, good, we have a handheld. Good.
I'm wondering, Clive, what you're doing, how does this interact with and have an impact on, and this is a question for Scott as well, and Mark, on museum education as it is practiced, and how is the outside, inside working together? How is it shaping the way museum education is being practiced in here at the Meadows, and if we want to even use the specific example of this exhibition and how it will all come together in terms of your outreach, what's already in the planning stages, the educational program, which is renowned here.
I think it's a great question, and for us, we had to start somewhere first, right? And now that we're 3 years in, and the start was to build the relationships around the city. And I've been saying this over the last few months in front of our staff faculty. I'm confident now that we're in a position where if students are interested in something specific related to their practice and going out into community, we can be a matchmaker and we can help guide them to think about what's most strategic because we have a growing lay of the land, if you will. I think your question for us and for me points to the future and what else we can do. Now that we have kind of solid relationships that we continue to nurture, to create even more connectivity amongst our respective entities on campus, and to start going deeper in that. So for me, that means curricular integration. One of the things I've talked to Sam about and our fellow deans is starting a minor so that we can carve into some time programmatically. But I wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have been able to say that arriving day one, So I think it is very much something for us to focus on and continue to develop intentionally, So there isn't anything right now outside of these steps.
This session is actually the first public collaboration of Ignite Arts Dallas and the Meadows Museum. And my phone tells me it's 12:02 p.m. Thank you, especially to John.